Hey everyone, thanks very much for joining me on this episode of the Everyday Investor podcast. To really invest well is basically a learning and a doing exercise. Over time, you're going to figure it out. Thinking about why you invest though and who you are doing it for, that's the next level, and that's kind of what we should be learning how to do at the same time. If one of the reasons why you're building wealth is because you want to give your children a better start, then you have two choices. You could either just get wealthy yourself and give them some money and hope that they can make the best use of it, or you can teach them what to do with it. You can teach them how to fish. But if it takes a village to raise a child in this pursuit, then we need a public education system to help us do the job properly. Unfortunately, in New Zealand and in many parts of the world, our public education system is failing. Who's to blame? Well, it's probably not the teachers, the principals, the schools, or even maybe some of the bureaucracy around the whole thing. I think we potentially have to go a little bit further and look at the ideology that not only is damaging our society, but is definitely damaging the next generation as well. I believe that children are our future, and if we teach them well, we can let them lead the way. Thank you, Whitney Houston. If you believe the same thing, then you should be paying attention to this episode. Education is one of those really tricky topics, but I think it has a lot to do with how we build wealth as a nation and within the family. So I'm keen to cover it, and to help me out, I've invited two very special guests from the Maxim Institute. That's an independent think tank that promotes the dignity of every person in New Zealand by standing for freedom, justice, and compassion. Three of my favorite things. Now, our first guest is Marianne Spurtle, a researcher at the Maxim Institute who has written extensively on education policy, curriculum design, and teacher training. And our second guest, you might recognize his voice, is Tim Wilson, the executive director of the Maxim Institute, who oversees the strategic direction and operations of the organization. I'm excited to have this conversation today. I hope you enjoy it. Let's get started. You're listening into the Everyday Investor podcast. Passive investing, property investment, managed funds, and crypto. If you're an everyday person wanting to build new wealth for the new world that you're heading into, then this podcast is for you. I'm Darcy Ungaro, your host. I'm a qualified financial advisor, but I'm still learning how to invest better and teach others how to do the same. I talk with guests and cover a range of topics designed to get you to think for yourself here. But please keep in mind, this can't be considered financial advice. Be sure to do your own research here and seek qualified advice of your own before making investment decisions. If you want more information, check out the show notes in your podcast player and make sure that you've subscribed to YouTube also. Then follow the Everyday Investor on all social media channels. The NZ Everyday Investor podcast receives support from the following partners: Easy Crypto, the safe and easy way to buy and sell crypto in New Zealand; Gorilla Technology, increasing business success through innovative and strategic IT solutions; Ungaro & Co. Financial Advice for everyday people building everyday wealth. Hope you enjoy the show. Let's get started. As a starting point, what would you suggest is the state of our current educational system here in New Zealand?
I think it's been misguided for a while.
Yeah. And look, I mean, internationally, we've gone back in terms of numeracy, literacy. We're looking at fewer kids coming to school. And there was, it's like, oh, well, that was COVID. It's bouncing back. It was a problem before COVID, and it is a problem still.
We're not the only country that's followed flawed philosophies, but a lot of other countries have U-turned and picked up on things that aren't working.
Yes.
We don't seem to be changing direction very quickly.
What is the ideology that governs the education system? Because it feels like it needs a name. So what would you call the flavor of the education system right now?
There are a few different terms that could be associated with what's, the general trends. Progressive ideology from like the 1970s. There's been a focus on centering things around the student. It's all focuses on
student-led learning, and you've heard that that mantra.
Student-led. I don't have a background in education. I came into.
Hey, I don't have a background in media, so.
And I'm broke, so
listen to us.
Yeah. Please pay attention to us.
ideologies, they sound good. So student-led learning sounds wonderful. You want students to be engaged. You want to be teaching things that they think are relevant. However, you also need evidence. So a lot of these good-sounding ideas have been following cultural trends, social trends, and they've been following them to their logical conclusion without checking, are we actually producing students who have a grasp on the knowledge they need to function well in life? And a lot of the times that's not been the case. Student-led learning, what it looks like today in New Zealand, you've got a curriculum that's really stripped back. So subject areas that would have had 30, 40, 50 pages worth of material 20 years ago with the 2007 curriculum, a lot of them are on a single double-sided A4.
Is that right? So one piece of paper is the curriculum.
And teachers have to fill the gap, right?
Exactly. So it's left wide open because you don't want to overprescribe stuff. You don't want learning to be overly prescribed because then you're imposing this on students, making them memorize things. So you need to leave it open to whatever is interesting to the student, whatever is culturally relevant, whatever is relevant because of, whatever's happening in a certain point in time. Different things seem more significant than others. But the result of that is that you've got a curriculum that doesn't direct teachers into what they need to be teaching at each level, connecting those levels up, because learning is a progression. So it's not that all students are getting a horrible education because of this. What it means is if you don't have a teacher who understands how to put a curriculum together, who doesn't understand the subject area well, which in primary schools, teachers have to teach across a range of subjects. And for example, teachers, I saw one statistic, which was that a significant number of teachers actually experience anxiety teaching maths. Significant percentage don't like maths.
Yeah.
Surveyed them and you're like, a whole lot of primary school teachers don't like maths.
So you would think then in that, given that situation, it would be very helpful to have a maths curriculum on hand for people that get anxious about it and or don't like it.
And so with this progressive ideology, student-led learning, and I've encountered this as well. Like I've got a few kids, so I know what it's like. And I've got one child in particular who's now outside of the public system, thankfully, and we can see it a lot more now. And I was talking to my wife last night, who's an ex-school teacher, and she was saying that even with a lot of the other parents that she'll talk to at school, they'll say that sometimes within age groups, there's quite a distinct difference in terms of their literacy, like their reading and writing, and their numeracy, the mathematics, their skills. And clearly that signals maybe that there's been a lot of changes that have come through in terms of how the teachers are being taught.
So there's two things, with the curriculum, and international research has shown this. Countries that have a more specified curriculum tend to have a smaller gap between those who are performing well and those who aren't, and higher outcomes in general. It's content rich, which ours is the opposite of, in general. And I mean, what you put into the curriculum obviously is very important as well. There are so many moving parts there. But those who research this, looking across different countries, the trend is the more content rich, the better. And there have been U-turns in different countries. Australia's curriculum now is highly regarded. The UK, a few other random countries whose names don't come to mind now, but smaller ones, so you wouldn't think of them as being high achieving. They've gone from skills-based is another word for the ones that are very focused on just kind of the how to do stuff rather than what you need to learn. Less knowledge and more kind of application. An educator an educational theorist named Michael F.D. Young, I think he's the one credited with the phrase powerful knowledge. So in the 70s, he was actually a proponent of progressive ideologies, working with working class students in the UK. And their theory was they've got this foreign curriculum that's being imposed on them. And he fully bought into this. They actually
would it have been a more class-based?
Very much class-based,
okay. Right.
So working class, and it's like, well, you've got issues with the family, you've got issues with the system. Let's look at the system. The system is obviously not working for these kids. What they did differently was they switched to what would be a more skills-based curriculum. They tried to make it more relevant to the students. Quote, community-oriented curricula that they trialed. By the way, it's really good to trial these things on a small group rather than imposing. This is across the board.
No, just
many things aren't tested. They're just rolled out in a whole country, and you're like, did we actually check if this was a good idea or not?
Yeah.
So they tried with just a select number of students, this community-oriented curricula, and they found that they were, in his words, equally alienating. He decided after their experiments that true equity was making sure that all pupils had equal access to powerful knowledge, not treating all knowledge equally.
All knowledge is not equal.
No.
So you democratize the access to that powerful knowledge, and that's how you free people. You free people. Yeah.
Ironically, the more strict it is, the smaller the gaps, and I guess it's probably better for inequality.
Yeah.
Right.
And by strict,
Well, I guess
it doesn't have to be everybody has to memorize this, and it's, there's a test every week. It doesn't have to be that type of education. And I think a reaction to that type of education has got us where we are. It was the way educators I've listened to are speaking about it. They don't want to go back to highly rote learning. You don't need to. You need to identify what knowledge is truly powerful. And it's not always going to be something that's familiar to a student in their context. Student-led learning makes it sound like if it's not something that is in that student's small world, then it's irrelevant to them.
No, it's the things that are like, going from print journalism to TV. I never wanted to be a TV journalist. I always, there were their flashy suits and the insincerity. And then having to do it, being forced to do it because I was broke again and needed the money. I learned so much, and I also was pushed into a discomfort zone where you have to actually recalibrate who you are. So I think that's, if I can go back educationally, I encountered T.S. Eliot's poem, The Wasteland, when I was 13 at Whanganui High School. And it was something that gave me a love for poetry that I've had all my life. And it was completely outside of any of my experience, but it was incredible. And I didn't understand almost all of it, but there was something in it. There was a music there, and it compelled me. And that pulled me out of my context to somewhere else.
That's what you're talking about then, though. It's about getting out of your head rather than go deeper
into your head.
The current system, I guess, would encourage people to, well, why don't you just tell me about the truth that you already know, right?
Tell me about your truth, Darcy.
Yeah. So this subjective sort of relativism, it's relative, rather than this objective reality and fact.
Powerful knowledge.
A constructivist ideology, on the other hand, you construct your own reality. Everybody's truths are equal. There are multiple knowledges. And the trouble with all this is it's not just influencing the curriculum and the way students are taught. It's actually influenced the way that teachers are being taught. And teacher training has also changed quite a bit over the last 20 to 30 years. And so teachers are less prepared to teach because of the way they've been taught.
Okay.
So we're not teaching students effectively because we're not teaching teachers effectively.
That's a big part of it. And if you look at what is most influential to a student's learning, like you, Tim, if you think back to your own life and you go, what has made the difference? What has been more significant than something else? Teachers are hugely significant.
Oh, absolutely. In a sense, those teachers, when they were chastising me, they were taking me seriously. They were not saying, "Oh, you do you." I actually didn't need to do me. I was quite good at it. I needed to do a different me. And so they would, but they also, it's like carrots and sticks. So they would also encourage me. They would say, "Okay, you're good at that," or "This is something that you're successful at," or "This is working for you." But I need you to do this other stuff that you're not disposed to do, like the rote learning, etc. Learning. My French teacher at high school, Frank Blakely, he was fantastic. And those figures, I think, who demanded something of you and said, "You know what, you're wrong." Those are the two most liberating words in the English language. Yeah. You're wrong. No, actually three. You are wrong. That's okay. Yeah. I'll stick with it.
So if we think about like the the style of teaching that currently exists, it fits really nicely with a lot of the other cultural flavors that are apparently common
downstream
right
of
now.
a lot of these ideas. Yeah. And this is, it took me a while to get my head around this, but things started making sense when I connected these ideas. So if in the classroom you're just a guide and it's student-led, then what is the role of the teacher? You're just there to kind of, you could be somebody else. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You're just there to help them.
You're just there to toast the marshmallows and boil the billy, right?
I mean, these students just need to be helped becoming themselves, right? If you see teaching as a profession where the teacher actually has quite a lot to bring to the classroom, and you're not just a guide, but you're actually somebody who is imparting knowledge. You have the knowledge, you're sharing it, you are a main actor in this scenario, then you've got a whole different outlook in what your role is as a teacher.
I guess with teachers, they're not necessarily being put into a profession where, I guess they're not being considered authoritative figures within the classroom anymore.
Well, if they don't consider themselves authoritative figures, that's probably the biggest deal. Now, there's a Kiwi educator named John Hattie, and he publishes these rankings of different things that are positive influences on education. The top 10 that I looked at, I think the different ones have changed year to year, but the year I was looking at, the top 10, 7 of them related to the teacher, and only 3 were student-specific. And the main one is teacher efficacy, and that is how the teacher sees their influence in the classroom. If you don't see that there is powerful knowledge that is there to be imparted, and without it, there'll be gaps in education, then you go down a whole different track. So in the 90s, teachers' colleges began to be absorbed by universities. It was seen as a good thing because it was more...
You're professionalizing teaching? Yeah,
the whole professionalizing of everything, However, the people training teachers, well, now they have to do a certain amount of research, so their focus is divided. Like you said, it's more...
it's academia coming down as well.
Yeah, it's more ideological, more academic, less practical.
More theoretical.
Yeah.
So we're teaching brass tacks, basics, core knowledge. We're teaching them all of the stuff around it, like all the ideological fluff around it.
Yeah, well, the teachers are being trained to think about teaching and about society through a certain lens, very strongly being promoted. You're looking at things through lenses like race and culture, which that has to be understood and taken into account. However, the primary purpose is to impart knowledge.
Because this is all the stuff that we kind of get bombarded with in the media, is all this, the race and the culture stuff. But how helpful is that with our kids?
I think the answer is
mathematics.
Exactly. What are the scores telling us? And also, so you've got the outcome from the students. That's clearly not going well. But you've also got to look at how are teachers faring. And we've got a real shortage of teachers. And that's the other problem. A lot
of don't want to be here. Is that what you're saying?
A lot of teachers.
A lot of people don't want to be teachers, or they're bailing out, or they're going to Australia, where they'll get better wages. That's a structural New Zealand Australia problem. It's not just a teaching. Yeah. I think we do have a teaching problem in the sense that in our country we don't value teaching, and that is reflected in the wages. And I think what you've been good at negotiating is, we're not blaming teachers for this situation. What's happened is a collection of ideological inclinations have sort of crowded around the structure that has been built to make teachers, to train them, and in some sense they're struggling as much as the kids are, because they haven't been given the ability to or the tools with which they can actually make the job satisfying, and when you see kids learn something, it's thrilling, and you see that them light up. I think that's the essence of why people go into teaching.
Everything's been made harder for teachers.
Yeah.
So with the curriculum being stripped back, well, that adds to their workload.
They have to generate their own curriculum, so they have to go on social media to find curriculum.
I read that on one of the reports.
Yeah.
Like 76% or so.
Yeah. And I mean, there could be good content floating around there. Dr. Nina Hood's report is fantastic because she actually surveys a whole bunch of teachers to find out where are they sourcing material from, how much time is it taking them, what is the quality, what do they view the quality of what's being provided by their schools. So you've got, I think it was 3/4 of teachers are sourcing their own material. A similar proportion don't think that should be their job. They think it should be, which I would assume that if you come into a school to teach, they go, look, this is what we want you to teach at this year level. I mean, sure, you improvise, but...
Yeah, well, help me figure this out. So if teachers are going online, 76% of them, to try and find out what to teach the kids, what does the Ministry of Education do?
They are providing some material. It's not the highest rated by teachers as far as quality, and I found that statistic interesting.
Was that another Nina Hood statistic?
This is in her survey. Yeah. So even the Ministry of Education's materials, it didn't rank at the bottom, but not all teachers found it particularly helpful.
Right.
Only about half of teachers are actually trained in curriculum design. And talking to one of the vice principals at Auckland Grammar, highly rates Graduate School of Education and how they're doing it. Their school, a few others in Waikato University, are working on their own teacher training. So you've got people who are
so there's a kind of
higher teachers who are finding out ways of training them themselves because they're not getting enough and not high enough quality teachers. There is a difference in what's being taught in different programs. Most of the universities, they're pretty similar, and that report from the New Zealand Initiative kind of spells out what is being taught. Right. They've broken down by different subject areas what is involved. And the argument they make is this should be more practical, just to put it in a nutshell.
I can say this just from a parent. From what I've been seeing the kids come home with in terms of what they're learning about, and then seeing, especially through COVID, what they're not learning about quite obviously.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. They can't do basic math. Like I remember at the age of 10, I'm pretty sure at the age of 10, I could do long division.
Yeah.
My kids couldn't do that. And they didn't even know what it was.
So was there any requirement that they do that?
I have no idea.
Yeah.
Because how would I find out? It's when you ask the teacher, they're using words that I like when you go to do the student-led interviews to start with.
Is that actually a thing?
That's what they call it.
Kids in the...
there's your kids there's the teacher, there's you and your wife, and then there's the child who's in there. And I can understand it's like, I want to make you a part of this. But I mean, when you parent, you don't litigate an issue in front of the kids so that they can participate. No way.
You tell them what to do.
Well, you get with you have a you have a high level meeting with your beloved, and then
that's what you're saying.
You establish your talking points, and then you go out and you take them to the kids. But the notion that children have this ability to I don't know, improve the process. I think it misunderstands the nature of kids.
Well, it assumes that the kids are at an equal footing to adults. Like they're able to make decisions now as an adult.
And that is exactly what's behind the whole student-led learning and progressive ideology is you cannot have someone more powerful than another person.
Oh, yeah.
So regardless of the age, you're not allowed basically to exercise authority over that person.
That seems to be
which completely undermines the family unit, right? Like that, because you do have to exercise authority over kids every now and then.
Well, I think also it fails the children. Well, we found that when we have more structure, and it varies in the home, but when we have more structure, the kids respond to it positively, and that's because they're kids. So the notion that they are the equal of adults actually degrades and immiserates the children because it doesn't accurately represent their psychological experience. And so it's actually that ideology is not only untrue, it's corrosive.
Yeah. And it isn't, saying that one person is making the decisions and one person isn't. That doesn't make that person more important than the other person. It's just recognizing that one person
is better equipped,
greater view of what's going on here, and in the classroom, that's the teacher.
But it is quite pervasive, isn't it? Because in the classroom, in my day, the teacher in the classroom had authority, and I was going through school. I think right when you didn't get the cane, I think that became a thing, right, where you didn't have the cane anymore, and it was still.
I bet you were glad of that, Darcy. Would have. They stopped beating you. They stopped beating you.
It was such a foreign concept, though.
Yeah.
From North America, and then
Was there the cane here?
Yeah,
so you
there
came
was.
from North America where there was no cane,
correct.
and to the flailing canes of New Zealand.
Exactly.
Oh, wow.
So I heard about this, right?
Right.
But the teachers were still extremely authoritative, which I think was critical in helping me to shift into taking schools seriously, which if I didn't do, I wouldn't have taken learning seriously.
Yeah.
Because I needed to understand my place in the pecking order. So that's authority.
It's like hierarchy actually liberates people. It doesn't oppress people. It liberates people because it allows you to say, where do I fit in this? Okay, this is what I have to do now. And at the moment, I'm a cog. I want to be a spring. To become a spring, I have to do a bit of cogging and figure out, watch that spring and see what they're doing and then go to that. Not like, oh, I just want to be a spring. I'm a spring now.
Yeah. But it feels like, I guess, we're in a culture which believes that hierarchical structures are fundamentally oppressive. Comes from all sorts of baggage with that, right? And so I can see why even just having this conversation and identifying the problem and then connecting it to this broader ideological problem that we have in culture, it's almost kind of redundant to a certain extent, because how is it actually even going to be possible to shift the tide here with education in New Zealand? Is it going to be possible? Because it's going to be completely at odds with the rest of culture.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, people are still paying attention to what works.
Sure.
So we do have people...
Evidence-based approaches.
Exactly. And so we've got an incoming government that's talking about emphasizing math and literacy. We've got conversations around what should be in the curriculum. It's being rewritten. It's a very out there question as to what it's going to look like. It could go either way. It could end up being more content rich. It couldn't really be much less than it is now. However, the drafts that have come out, especially around like the science curriculum about 3 or 4 months ago, people reviewing that were a little alarmed to see that some subject areas weren't even mentioned. So it still seemed to be a bit of a fill in the gaps curriculum. It's not the final version. We are going to get a new government that will hopefully have some input into it. So it could change. With teacher education, you do have schools like Auckland Grammar and a few others that are partnering with a university to do things differently. And then if you look overseas and see what's happening there, all it would take is a few people to go in the direction that other countries have gone. And it is a little bit countercultural because, like you said, it's just absorbing things that people believe anyway. But in Australia, they have changed the curriculum, being able to read, comprehension, having the vocabulary, and then in maths being able to do, like you're talking about long division and stuff, having those things solidified in your mind at a young age is really important, because then when you come across new information, you've got hooks to hang that on. Absolutely. You can teach yourself, So
that's the progressive learning concept.
Yeah.
The proper definition of it.
Yeah.
Where we're building on things. Okay.
So this whole student-centered approach that's trying to get kids engaged, if they don't know what's going on, they're not going to be engaged.
Right. So are you proposing teacher-centered learning?
How about education and fact-centered?
Yeah. So, Australia, in this one group of schools, they did that. The ministers of education in Australia are requiring initial teacher education with obviously not masses of new content. Those teachers were able to teach reading better. If that is just part of regular teacher training, then all teachers will show up able to use those methods. So
I think it might answer too for the gap in people wanting to be teachers. So if teachers are feeling successful, if they're feeling equipped, if they're able to do their job well, then they're going to be telling, that it's going to create a kind of dynamic momentum, if you like, and that's going to draw people to the profession. If the teachers are not being equipped properly, then of course they're going to go elsewhere.
Yeah.
Of course they're going to want to do something else.
Teachers want to feel successful in what they're doing, and there's some sort of progression as well.
Yeah.
But at the moment, it feels like when things come from the top down, from a very centralized place, it kind of feels like the opposite happens. It feels almost like this the more centralization there is with, I guess, the pointy heads at the very top, the less there's actually progress with those below. I don't know.
That sounds like oppression.
It does sound a little like oppression, which is exactly the thing.
Yeah,
against,
we're
right?
trying we're trying to avoid.
Everything is opposite.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, as the people at the top are focusing on what works and making sure people are well equipped.
And evidence-based.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there are some who are. There are different voices in this mix here. But we've been progressing down a path that has been not interested in examining whether or not things are working. And now that it's gotten as bad as it has, more and more people are going, something has to change.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is that, to Darcy's point, is that, well, will things be able to change? You're saying that within education, there is an impetus to look at some facts, see what the evidence is, and look overseas as well.
Yeah.
So
There are plenty of people paying attention to what's working academically. There are still people who ideologically, what I would say works based on the evidence, doesn't match their ideology, and so they're not interested in it.
Right. So they're measuring everything within their worldview.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't match with that, they're not interested, and so they're resistant to the change that probably needs to happen. But I guess even at a vocational level, even higher up, people probably don't want to acknowledge the fact that things are broken, because it means that they can't continue on with the ideas.
no one likes to admit they're wrong.
And it depends on what you're shooting for.
Yeah.
And I think we've actually got people aiming at different targets. You've got some people who are looking at, can kids read well? Are they progressing well? What are our scores telling us internationally, and doing those comparisons? Some people are really not happy with a lot of testing. They see the purpose of education as reforming society. And I mean, if you're seeing it as a means of reforming society, it doesn't matter what adds up to what. You know, you can
It's not about
pick a
education,
number.
right?
It's about,
George Orwell, 2 + 2 = 5.
And it can, if you are, saying that in the right language, or it's
Yeah, no, I think George has got a lot to do with seeing this curriculum in advance. So tell me, like, I'm a parent, right? I want to think, well, yes, it is possible to change here, and I hope that maybe my kids will learn something if they stay in the public school system. But what are some of the practical things that some of our audience might want to consider if they want to just exercise some common sense tactics around, like, just affecting some change, right? Like, can we go to the school board meetings? What can we do?
Yeah, I think you absolutely should, and get to know your teachers, because I think most teachers are well motivated. They want kids to succeed. They're not always equipped to help them do it, and they're short on time. They're often burdened with administrative. That's something that we do hear a lot from teachers. So say, I'm here to help. Let's try and work together. It's
Not
also
just with your
teacher, so make sure that you connect on some relational level with your teachers, with your kids' teachers, because then they'll be like, they won't just see, oh, there's that annoying kid. They'll go, oh, there's that annoying kid whose parent I quite like because they brought me some cake the other day. So I'm going to, we're all relational. So let's I think that's important. And get on the school board.
Yeah.
Like, take time out to go down to the school, what is it, once a month or whenever, and agitate for the kind of change that we've been talking about. How are teachers equipped? What does the curriculum look like? How can we make it more attractive to teachers, and also more supportive? I think that's the issue.
Right. So get to know your teacher, get on the board,
Get involved.
Get involved. Yeah, help out of the school, definitely.
Yeah.
What other things can we do?
I think systemically we've got this assumption that whatever zone you're in, that's the school the kids go to, unless you've got a whole lot of money. It doesn't always work that way. It does here at the moment, but we had charter schools. We didn't because of the last government, and now we may again. I think there's a will for that kind of thing.
Can you define charter schools just for people that might not know what that means?
Right. So it's a school that's not a public school, but the funding that a child would use at a public school can be used at that school. So the parents don't have to pay.
Right. So, but there's some competitive pressure in that.
Yeah. And a lot of the ones that were set up a few years back were special character. They were run by community groups, by Mirai. So they had a very specific purpose in mind. And I think the beauty of that is we want diversity in our society to be encouraged. We don't want people to be, again, top down.
That's right.
This is the way you will be.
Mm.
But our education system isn't diverse. So
And kids are different. So you've got, Darcy, you've got one kid in the public system, one kid somewhere else. And that's probably because those children are wired differently. And each of those systems responds to that. Whereas you can't have this cookie cutter one size fits all because we're all different.
Even within a family.
Yeah.
Let alone our society.
Yeah, absolutely.
So looking, I don't have answers for that. That's one of the things we're looking into.
Yeah.
But what realistically would encourage diversity of education so that people have choices?
Yes. Okay. So there needs to be kind of a little bit more of that competitive pressure, which motivates people to strive for more and to be
and it would create competition.
Well, and to give parents choice.
Yes.
So parents typically don't have choice.
No.
They're just determined.
Without a lot of sacrifice.
You're in the zone.
Homeschool or
pay
for private education.
Yeah.
Should it be tax deductible, private school expenses?
Good question.
I wouldn't say no, but I'm not paying for a private school, so.
Well, it depends how much the expenses. I know that. I mean, there's some really good private schools, but I'm not.
Same thing with health insurance, right? It's like the reason why I'm asking that is like a lot of people will have health insurance and they're effectively taking the burden off financially.
Here's how I would deal with that would be when you tax when you go for tax, you tax households. You don't tax individuals. So if both parents are working, you would say, well, this is what the household makes, rather than taxing the individual. If one parent's working, their tax level is different because someone's staying at home, so that allows a sort of a basis for, because I think the way our society is at the moment, people are trying to get ahead. Both parents are working. Sometimes it's helpful to have one parent, and it could be the mum, it could be the dad at home, because they're able then to attend to the kids, to attend to the education part of the equation. So it took me a while to evolve that thought, but yeah.
Makes sense. Generally speaking, though, are you optimistic about New Zealand's educational system going forward? Say over a 10-year period, do you think we can turn this ship around?
I haven't been that aware of what's going on in education until I started looking into this stuff recently. So I don't have the history to say this is what the trend is. However, having jumped into this scene, I have been speaking to and read stuff from a lot of voices who are very passionate about education, very committed to making sure that whatever we're doing is working well. So I'm optimistic in that there are good people who are advocating for what look like very good ideas. And there are a lot of new things on the horizon.
There's the political will,
training,
perhaps,
political will,
to
changing government,
to make change.
Yeah,
and I think that's something.
Expand on that a little bit.
We have an incoming government. There's a new attitude. I mean, look, the ACT Party's education platform is that we want to completely rearrange the system. Now, is that going to happen? It depends on the coalition arrangements. But given that it's not as if things are just working fine, we'll just tweak some knobs here. So I think there is a different, there's a different attitude politically. Just how that plays out, I think there's a certain level of discontent as well amongst parents, amongst teachers. I'm sensing from you, Darcy, a certain level of discontent.
I'm picking up what
my
clients and what my peer group are saying a lot, and there's a lot of discontent with this. Like, I wouldn't normally be talking about this topic on the podcast, but that says something, because I feel like it is such I feel like, to be honest, it's a contributor towards poverty long term and inequality. And it's because of an ideology that's seeped into all parts of society. So we kind of have to stand up a little bit when it's not really what people like us do, but we kind of have to, because it's not going to change by itself.
And I think education is we're not talking about kids now, we're talking about the future. And to get back to that point about truancy, if we're accepting levels of truancy that are at 30%, where are those kids going to go? What are they going to do? How are they going to survive in the future? And that's going to be a societal issue. So if we can equip kids, if we can stimulate them, if we can motivate them, we become a different proposition as a country. It's not simply an education issue. I think it's a social issue. It's an economic issue. Cameron Bagri, we had him at one of our events leading economist. He's passionate about education because he sees it as an economic issue, and it is so multivalent.
I think my optimism is a little bit it's driven by the negative. Truancy has never been so bad. Scores have never been so low. I think the discontent has never been so much that I feel like something has to change. There's enough, there are enough people discontent that something's going to be done. I have a friend who's a principal of a small private school, and her waitlist has never been longer. She just sees parents everywhere who want something different for their kids.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, now, if people want to learn more about what Maxim Institute does and be involved in some way, what can you direct people towards?
Come to the website.
What's that website again, Tim?
Why, Darcy? It's www.maxim.org.nz. You can follow us at official, if you're on Instagram, at official Maxim Institute on Instagram, or we're on Facebook as well. And that way you'll get access to our op-eds, our research, our podcasts. Follow us on Spotify or iHeartRadio.
How do you spell Maxim?
Maxim.
If you want to contribute financially.
Yeah, guess what? Marianne's still in the not-for-profit area because we are a charity. So if people like what they see and they want to sign up, they want to contribute, that would be awesome too.
Tax deductible people.
Yep, absolutely.
That's all good. Well, thank you very much to you both, Marianne Spurtle, Tim Wilson. Thanks for coming on today.
Thanks, Darcy.
Thanks, Darcy.
Thanks for listening into the Everyday Investor Podcast. Like what you've heard, but you want more? Make sure that you've subscribed to our YouTube channel and subscribe to the Everyday Investor newsletter too. The links for everything are found in the show notes that you can access easily by swiping or tapping over the cover art in your podcast player. If you received value in some way, I'd love it if you could take the time to write a review wherever you listen to podcasts. Share it with a friend, or think of our show partners where appropriate. Easy Crypto, the safe and easy way to buy and sell crypto in New Zealand. Gorilla Technology, increasing business success through innovative and strategic IT solutions. And Ungaro & Co. Financial advice for everyday people building everyday wealth. Remember, some investments or strategies discussed on these episodes may result in financial loss. Be sure to do your own research and ideally seek qualified advice of your own before making investment decisions. Hope you enjoyed today's episode, and we'll catch you next time around.